Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of For Pete's Take. I'm Joey Peterson, and I am stoked because we have an amazing weekend of college football. Basically, the SEC semifinals. In the West, we got Alabama and LSU facing off on Saturday night in Death Valley. And then, of course, we got Tennessee going to Athens, playing Georgia at 3:30 on Saturday, and it is going to be a fun one. It's the game we're previewing, the game we're predicting, and the game I'm most excited about this weekend. It's Tennessee's biggest game in the last, maybe this whole century, but probably since 2007 when they played LSU in the SEC Championship. The Vols haven't had a meaningful game like this in a long time. Not a game that means this much, because basically, I said it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I'll say it again. Winner of this game will go to the SEC Championship, barring an upset at the end of the year. And I think if we want to just start off right now, I think that gives a small advantage to Georgia. Not the biggest one, nothing that's going to tip the scales too much, but Georgia's a team that's been in this kind of game a lot. Last year, they played in the SEC Championship. They played in the first round of the playoffs, and they played in the national championship. These players, this coaching staff, Stetson Bennett, they're all people who are used to playing on these big of stages. Tennessee, it's not the same. 2 years ago, they were 3-7. Last year, they were 8-5. And so I would give a small advantage to Georgia in that sense. I would. Nothing big, like I just said. Nothing's going to tip the scales too much, but they've been in this game before. Now, if we're going to talk about things that are going to tip the scales, I think we have three things we need to look at. And number one, we're going to start with that man, Brock Bowers. He is an absolute game wrecker. He's the leading receiver, 457 yards receiving. He leads their team in yards per catch with a little bit over 17, and he leads their team in receiving touchdowns with 3. Oh, and he's also ran 3 touchdowns in. He's a game wrecker. We saw him do it against South Carolina. We saw him do it against Florida. And if the Vols want to win on Saturday, they need to stop him or slow him down. But that's the thing about Brock, is it's not easy, right? If it was easy, every team would be doing it every weekend. But it's not easy. The thing about him is he's 6'5", 230 pounds. So he's a big guy, but he can also burn it. So you can put a linebacker on him and say, okay, we're going to match up size-wise. He's probably going to be faster than that linebacker. Okay, put a corner on him. Well, he's a lot bigger than that corner, right? So if you're Tennessee, you got to look, how do we handle him? Last year, Theo Jackson, Tennessee's defensive player at their star position, I think would have been a great matchup with Brock Bowers. But he's gone. So now let's see what they're working with. I think Danico Slaughter is one of the names that comes to mind. We saw him have a great game against Kentucky last weekend. Forced interception, got an interception. He's a guy who's a corner, and he's fast, but he just said in his press conference, he loves to play in the box. He loves to hit. He's not scared to hit. We saw that lick that he laid against that Kentucky wide receiver this last weekend. He would be a good option at covering and trailing Brock Bowers. Another person that comes to mind is Tamari McDonald. We've seen him at that star position all year long when he's been healthy. He's a guy, again, who's very comfortable with hitting, very physical, but also has some wheels on him. Also is fast. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Tennessee handles Brock Bowers, because I think that is a very important stat and a very important thing to look at for this game. Another thing is Georgia's rushing offense. Okay, they're 4th in the SEC, but the thing about them is they're dynamic. They have 4 players that have rushed for over 230 yards. Now, the most notable back is Dajon Edwards. He has 440 yards, and he has 7 touchdowns this year. They're a really good running team, and Tennessee's going to have to figure out how to stop it. But the thing about Tennessee is they're a really good rush defense. Number 1 in the SEC. Number 9 in the nation against the run. This last week, they held Chris Rodriguez to 65 yards rushing in this last game. They're capable. They are very capable of doing that. But will they? Will they hold Georgia's rushing attack? Because this is important, because if they do that, you're going to force the ball into Stetson's hands. You're going to force Stetson Bennett to beat your team. Then it's a one-on-one matchup, Stetson versus Hendon. And I don't know about y'all, but I'll take Hendon every day in that matchup. So If the Vols can stop Georgia's rushing offense, if they can handle it, put the ball in Stetson's hand, make Stetson beat them, I don't know if he can. So let's talk about putting the ball into Hendon's hand. Okay, let's reverse it. This Tennessee passing offense, I can't say enough about it. Anybody on ESPN can't say enough about it. The whole country's talking about it, and that's because they are dynamic. But the thing not a lot of people are talking about is how balanced Tennessee's offense is. They actually run the ball more than they pass it. 8 of 14 of Jalen Hyatt's touchdowns, more than half of them, have come off of play action, have come off of a running back handoff fake. And 2 more of them have come on a fake screen pass. A pump fake screen pass hit Jalen down the field. This offense is dynamic. And what Heupel does really well is he uses weapons to get his other weapons open. We saw it this weekend against Kentucky 2 times on both of Jalen Hyatt's touchdowns. If you look at them, they have Cedric and Hyatt on the same side of the field. They have Tillman and Hyatt on the right side of the field. But on both times, he uses Ced as a decoy. So Ced runs. He either runs a slant or he runs a deep post. Either way, he's taking his man covering him. And then since he's running it right in front of that high safety sees him, cut right in front of him, goes down, tries to trail Ced, and then that leaves Jalen Hyatt wide open, one-on-one, which usually means that's a touchdown for the Vols. Now, Georgia's going to watch film. They're going to see that. With Kirby Smart as their head coach, I'm guaranteed they're going to be prepared for that. But that just means Josh Heupel's going to think of other ways to scheme these players open because they use their weapons to get other weapons wide open. Tennessee has so many ways that it can hurt this defense. It's so balanced, it's so dynamic, that it's even going to be hard for a great defense like Georgia to stop. And Georgia has a great defense, 4th in the entire country. But they haven't faced a team like Tennessee yet. They haven't had their hands full with an offense like Tennessee has. So I'm going to be very interested to see what Georgia does against this offense that hasn't been able to be stopped by anybody. I think for the Vols, it comes down to stopping the run and being good enough in the pass defense. Those 2 things are going to be crucial if Tennessee wants to escape Athens with a win and keep that number 1 spot. The spread right now is minus 8.5 in favor of the Bulldogs. So, Vegas is going Georgia, and I'm going to have to disagree. That's right. I said it. I'm going Vols this weekend. I just think that Tennessee's offense is too dynamic, it's too balanced, it's too good for this Georgia defense to put a total stop to it. And I think the Vols' rush defense is good enough to put the ball solely in Stetson's hand. And again, when you got Stetson versus Hooker, I take Hooker every time. Look at what Hooker did when he went one-on-one, offense on offense against Alabama. Look what he did. They tore down the goalposts in Elon Stadium at the end of that game, just for a little spoiler alert. So, if the Vols can stop their rushing attack, slow it down, and if they can keep on this dominant streak of offense, which I think they could, and I think they will. And if that's true, I got the Vols going 9-0. I got them staying at the number 1 team in the country. And I got them ultimately going to the SEC championship.